Have you ever opened a hive, lifted a frame, and thought, this is too heavy, or maybe unnecessarily complicated? Imagine tens of thousands of bees in perfect biological harmony, working from dawn until dusk. And yet, a single wrong choice of hive type can cost you up to 50% of your honey yield, trigger massive swarming you cannot control, and bring you dozens of hours of unnecessary, exhausting work in the apiary. Most beginners in beekeeping believe that choosing the hive their bees will live in is simply a matter of local tradition or the habits of their mentor. That is the biggest and most expensive misconception in modern apiculture. The bee absolutely does not care about the name written on your hive. What it cares about is thermodynamics, microclimate, and the spatial architecture of the nest. In today's episode, we resolve the oldest and most passionate dilemma among beekeepers: Langstroth root or Dadant blat. Scientifically, objectively, and without compromise, we will place both systems under a biological microscope. We will discover which hive enables perfect overwintering, which one brings record yields during intense nectar flows, and which one will save your back. If you want to stop guessing and start beekeeping in accordance with the laws of nature, stay with us. Let's begin. Before we dive into the anatomical differences of these two systems, we must understand one absolute biological law that connects them. Both Langstroth and Dadant blat are what we call stackable vertical hives that follow the natural instinct of a bee colony to expand upward rather than sideways, just as they would in a natural tree cavity. It all began in 1851, when an American pastor and beekeeper named Lorenzo Langstroth made a discovery that permanently changed the history of beekeeping. He discovered the so-called bee space. Langstroth precisely measured that bees naturally leave a gap of exactly 6.4 to 9.5 millimeters between comb surfaces. Within this space, they will not build additional wax comb, nor will they seal it with propolis. Instead, they allow free communication and movement of worker bees. This knowledge made the creation of movable frames possible. For the first time, a beekeeper could remove a frame, inspect the brood, and place it back again without destroying the nest. Langstroth patented his hive in 1852, and that moment is considered the birth of modern apiculture. However, the story soon takes a twist. Charles Dadant, an experienced beekeeper who moved from France to the United States, was fascinated by Langstroth's discovery of bee space. Yet, as a practical beekeeper, he noticed an important biological limitation. Dadant firmly believed that Langstroth hive bodies did not provide a large enough uninterrupted space for optimal brood development. He argued that a high-quality queen should never be restricted by frame height at the peak of her reproductive expansion. Through experimentation with ideal dimensions, he created the Dadant blat hive, a system that today dominates much of Europe, particularly in France, Italy, and the Balkan region. And here, the essential philosophical and biological divergence appears. Should a bee colony be given modular, segmented space actively managed by the beekeeper, or a massive, monolithic space where nature develops in its own uninterrupted rhythm? Let us begin with the Dadant blat system. The heart of this hive is its massive brood chamber. The brood frame height of approximately 300 millimeters, about 285 millimeters internal measurement, is not accidental. For the bee colony, this large comb surface represents a perfect biological canvas. Throughout evolution, a bee colony naturally tends to shape its nest in the form of a sphere. Why a sphere? Because geometrically, a sphere has the smallest external surface relative to its volume. In beekeeping terms, that means minimal heat loss and maximum energy efficiency when maintaining brood temperature at the ideal 34.5 to 35 degrees Celsius. Within a Dadant brood chamber of 10 or 12 frames, a high-quality queen has enough physical space to develop a proper radial egg-laying pattern. She moves in circles from the center toward the periphery without prematurely hitting the lower frame bar. A brood chamber like this can contain 70,000 to 80,000 worker cells. This creates what epidemiology calls a continuous thermal mass. The entire process of ontogenesis, from egg to larva to pupa to young bee, takes place within a single, uninterrupted block of wax comb. Around the central brood area, bees form a ring of stored pollen, and above that, a thick band of capped honey. The result of this architecture is almost perfect overwintering. During harsh winters with double-digit negative temperatures, the winter cluster forms in the lower portion of the comb. As winter progresses, the cluster gradually moves upward, millimeter by millimeter, following the heat and consuming honey reserves that remain directly above their heads. The risk of the cluster separating from its food supply in the Dadant system is statistically reduced to an absolute minimum. Studies show that colonies in deep brood chambers may experience up to 12% lower mortality during extremely cold winters. But this biological perfection comes with a cost. The Dadant brood chamber is static and extremely heavy. When filled with bees, brood, and honey, it may weigh 40 to 50 kilograms. If you practice migratory beekeeping, handling such weight requires significant physical strength. Additionally, because of the large brood chamber volume, early spring development may initially appear slower, since a small spring colony needs more energy and time to heat that large space before the queen begins laying eggs at maximum capacity. On the other side of the ring stands the Langstroth root LR system. If the Dadant hive can be described as a static fortress, then the LR hive is a dynamic modular system designed for flexibility. The standard LR frame is 232 millimeters high, and the brood nest in practice most often consists of 2 identical hive bodies. This changes everything about beekeeping technique. Commercial beekeepers around the world love the LR system for one key reason: working with entire boxes. In this system, you do not necessarily spend time moving frame by frame. When expanding space, you simply add, rotate, or remove entire hive bodies. However, the frame height of 232 millimeters introduces specific biological challenges. The queen quickly reaches the lower frame bar and is forced to expand brood in an elliptical pattern, moving from the lower brood box into the upper one. This physically divides the brood nest into 2 bodies. And here we reach a critical biological compromise. Between the lower and upper brood boxes lies a horizontal break. When we combine the bee space between boxes, the thickness of the top bars of the lower frames, and the thickness of the bottom bars of the upper frames, we obtain about 3 centimeters of space with no comb at all. This space is often referred to as a dead zone. During extremely cold winters, the movement of the winter cluster from the lower box to the upper one represents a significant thermodynamic jump. If temperatures are too low, bees may refuse to leave the cluster and cross this cold gap, and they can die of starvation even though 15 kilograms of capped honey may be located only a few centimeters above them. A honey bridge may also form at this intersection, where bees deposit honey and pollen, further discouraging the queen from moving upward in early spring. Yet what is a disadvantage in winter becomes a powerful beekeeping tool in spring. By rotating brood boxes, placing the full upper box onto the bottom board, and moving the empty lower box above you, artificially break the honey barrier. This creates empty space above the queen. Because bees naturally expand brood upward, this intervention triggers explosive colony growth. The LR system allows you to stimulate the colony beyond its natural expansion limits. I understand that if you are at the beginning of your beekeeping journey, this amount of biological and spatial information may feel overwhelming. The LR system offers speed, standardization, and box-based management. The DB system offers biological security, colony strength, and natural brood structure. So, how do you decide? How do you know what is right for your location, your physical abilities, and your goals? To avoid making the mistake many beginners make purchasing 30 or 50 hives of a system that ultimately does not suit them, I have systematized this process into a precise diagnostic tool. In the description of this video, you will find a link to download our free checklist, Langstroth or Dadant, 12 steps to the right choice. Inside it, you will find key questions about your climate, nectar flows, available time, and physical readiness. Click the link below, download your PDF guide in 30 seconds, and solve this dilemma once and for all. If you have already made your choice, write in the comments, are you on Team LR or Team DB, and why? And now, Let us continue with a deeper analysis of colony behavior during nectar flows. How do these two systems manage the greatest fear of every beekeeper, the swarming impulse? In apidology, the primary trigger of swarming is resource and pheromonal congestion. When a massive population of young bees has insufficient space to work, demographic pressure builds. In the Dadant blat hive, the queen is concentrated within the large lower brood chamber. As nectar intake rises sharply in spring, forager bees begin storing nectar in the upper portions of those large combs, creating the so-called honey cap. If the beekeeper does not add shallow supers in time, this honey cap becomes so thick that it physically pushes the queen downward, reducing her egg-laying space. The brood nest becomes blocked, and the colony rapidly enters a swarming impulse. Swarm control in the Dadant hive therefore requires surgical precision, timely removal of frames with capped brood to create nucleus colonies, and the addition of foundation frames to keep young bees busy producing wax. In the Langstroth root system, you are the manager of space. A beekeeper who understands the LR system must never allow brood nest congestion. By inserting an entire box of foundation or drawn comb between two brood bodies, you instantly break resource congestion and disrupt the swarming impulse. The LR system forgives timing mistakes more easily because it allows you to double the available brood space with a single action. But remember, the use of a queen excluder in the LR system is not optional, it is essential. Otherwise, the queen will follow the nectar upward and lay brood in the honey supers. When the main nectar flow arrives, such as acacia or linden bloom, the difference in honey supers becomes obvious. In the Dadant system, we use shallow supers, approximately 145 millimeters high. These shallow supers have a remarkable biological advantage. Because of their smaller volume, bees fill them quickly and cap them quickly. Moisture evaporates from nectar faster. Even if the nectar flow is weak or interrupted by bad weather, you will still have ripe, capped honey ready for extraction. Additionally, honey frames remain perfectly clean because the queen almost never enters them to lay eggs. In the LR system, honey supers consist of full-size boxes. During a strong nectar flow, a powerful LR colony can fill 2 or 3 supers in an extremely short time, producing record honey yields. However, if the nectar flow weakens, bees will spread small amounts of nectar across the large volume of those frames. The result is supers that are only partially filled and not capped, which complicates harvesting and increases honey moisture levels. Finally, we must talk about the most important factor in the apiary, you. Your back does not forgive mistakes in judgment. If you are young, physically strong, planning to manage hundreds of colonies, and intend to move them from nectar flow to nectar flow by truck, the Langstroth root hive is the global industrial standard. All boxes are identical, frames are fully interchangeable, modularity is maximum, and mechanization and pallet systems are designed around these dimensions. Beekeeping becomes logistically faster and more uniform. The LR system also facilitates inspections for dangerous brood diseases and treatments against varroa mites, because frames are smaller and easier to handle. If, on the other hand, you plan stationary beekeeping, practice beekeeping primarily out of passion, or you have reached an age where lifting 25 or 30 kilograms is no longer an option, the Dadant blat hive is your best ally. With this system, you will work carefully frame by frame within a brood chamber that is rarely lifted as a whole. When the honey harvest arrives, you will work only with light, shallow supers weighing 15 to 18 kilograms. Colonies will overwinter more naturally. There will be less need for spring feeding, and your back will remain grateful to you over the long term. Economic calculations also show that in our region, Dadant equipment is often slightly more affordable due to strong domestic production and the dominance of this system among local beekeepers. Both systems support biodiversity, but each requires a different beekeeper mindset. The LR system requires you to be a proactive planner of space, while the DB system requires you to be a careful observer who respects the massive and stable biology of the colony and does not disturb it unnecessarily. Dear beekeepers, we have reached the end of this deep analysis. Beekeeping is not a religion, it is applied biology. As we have seen, there is no best hive in the world in an absolute sense. There is only the best hive for your specific ecosystem, your microclimate, and your style of work. Whichever system you choose, the bee will adapt and survive. The most important rule you should remember today is this: it is not decisive which hive you own in your apiary, but how deeply you understand the biology of the bee colony living inside it. If this episode has given you a clear scientific perspective and helped you break common beekeeping myths, please click the subscribe button and like this video. Your support is what allows us to continue creating this kind of detailed, educational content. Be sure to check out our other series on the channel where we explore bee anatomy, brood diseases, and nectar plants in detail. And prepare for the next step. In the upcoming episode, we raise the bar and enter one of the most intriguing topics in modern apiculture. We will analyze a concept that changes the rules of the game. The next series is titled Beekeeping with a Single Brood Chamber. We will reveal techniques for maximizing the queen's potential by limiting space methods capable of producing record yields even in poor seasons. Download your free checklist from the video description, make a wise decision based on facts, protect your bees, and we will see you in the next episode. Honey flows!